Good evening. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about that. I was thinking about what can open you up to demonic influence, and that just came to me. The first escape from reality for me was books, and John Todd used extensively to talk about books and the books that the Illuminati children are allowed to read and the books that they are not allowed to read. And one thing he talked about was The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. Just so if you don't know, that's the Bible in German. That's about twice as thick as the King James in English, about, and it has 1,300 pages. The Lord of the Rings is like this, and the font is even smaller. So that's the German font, just like, I don't know, the size of the letters is very small, but in the Lord of the Rings, it's I was the fastest reader in my class. When I was in high school, when the others had 5 minutes to read something, I did it in 46 seconds. The first escape from reality for me was books. If you are engaged in fantasy, that also can open you up if you read occult things. If something is made by an occultist for the intention to manifest his intention, which is the definition of magic by Aleister Crowley, manifesting your willpower through magic, which he explained can also be just pen and paper. So if you read books by occultists, you open yourself up to demonic influence in your life. And I don't mean that jokingly. I mean it absolutely seriously. I only met one person in my whole life who read as much as I did, because reading was an escape for me when I was young. The Lord of the Rings, that's the Bible in German, it has 1,340 pages, something like that. The Lord of the Rings has about 3,000 pages, and it's even bigger than this book, higher and wider. So the only person that I ever met was a guy in university who read the book too, because it's so voluminous and it's so thick. It's a trilogy. I have the book in one thing. It's like that thick of a book. It has the finest print that you can read. And I think I read it in full 3 times. I attempted it like 10 times or something like that. I made it about 3 times. I'm trying my best not to exaggerate anything. I made it about 3 times through the whole book. And J.R.R. Tolkien, according to John Todd, was an occultist. And as was H.P. Lovecraft. And I was just thinking about it because I talked about demonic music. And as an example, I used burzum, which is a Norwegian death metal band. or was. So I thought that burzum is Norwegian, but it's not. Literally, burzum comes from the Lord of the Rings, and it is the forbidden language of Mordor inscribed on the One Ring, which only comes in the movie from Peter Jackson. It only comes once. Gandalf says it in Elrond's house. What's going on with my mouse? So he says the black speech. So J.R.R. Tolkien invented several languages for his book. Again, he invented several languages with sort of like ancient Latin. It's pretty. That's like a real language that he invented, several of them, just for the book. So I'm just reading from Wikipedia here. The Black Speech is one of the fictional languages constructed by Tolkien for his legendarium, where it was spoken in the evil realm of Mordor. In the fiction, Tolkien describes the language as being created by Sauron as a constructed language to be the sole language of all the servants of Mordor, thereby replacing with little success the many different varieties of Orcish, Westron, and other languages used by his servants. Tolkien describes the language as existing in two forms: the ancient pure forms used by Sauron himself, the Nazgûl and the Uruk-hai, and the more debased form used by the soldiery of Barad-dûr at the end of the Third Age. So if you never read the book, he invented like four of these languages, and it's like they have different prefixes and suffixes, like in ancient Latin. It's incredible that this guy, what he put into that book. So I was just thinking about that. This guy, what kind of curses he has put in this book. I really would be interested in that, because he must have spent a long time inventing all these languages. So the inscription reads: Ash nazg durbatulûk, Ash nazg gimbatul, Ash nazg thrakatulûk, burzum-ishi krimpatul. And that's the inscription of the One Ring. And I just heard that the band burzum means darkness. It comes from the inscription of the ring. So again, the inscription reads: Ash nazg durbatulûk, Ash nazg gimbatul, Ash nazg thrakatulûk, burzum-ishi krimpatul. Sounds evil, doesn't it? So if you are engaged in this fantasy world, why does it sound evil? That's the manifestation of the intention of the writer. And Aleister Crowley also used to write extensively about manifestation through poetry and writing. If you read the book from Crowley, Magic in Theory and Practice, he talks about that. So I've heard this several times. If you have books of occultists in your room, you have occult objects in your home, which opens you up to negative energy in your home. And So the band called Burzum, the death metal band who burned down all these churches and killed all these people, that comes from the Lord of the Rings. And it's just an interesting thing. So it means darkness. I thought that it is a Norwegian word meaning darkness, but it is not. It comes from the ring. So you see that this is a fictional book, but it has an influence on people that is satanic. Just ask Varg Vikernes of Burzum. He was in prison for 21 years. And in the end they started killing each other. It's just an insane story of what... I'm not saying that this has to happen to you, but I'm just saying that there's an intention behind that book to manifest things. And it's just... So if Gandalf only says it once. In the book he never talks, I think. As far as I can remember, Gandalf never. He once says, "I will never utter the words of Mordor." And in the film he says it once, when they are all, the Fellowship of the Ring meets in Elrond's house. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do it. So Boromir wants to take the ring from the desk, and they all sit around the ring, and then Gandalf stands up and utters the forbidden language of Mordor. In the book I think he does not do it, but the book is so huge that you really have to have a very, very long breath to read that book. So I think on the Lord of the Rings, even though I could read very, very, very fast, for easier things, I could like read a page like diagonally. So I could read very, very, very fast, but I would spend half a year or longer than that. I think I talked with the guy how long it took him to read the whole thing, and I think he said like 1.5 years, and I think I said about 8 months or 7 months, something like this. So about half a year it took me every day to read The Lord of the Rings, and I could read very fast. And so he has all these invented languages in the book, and I'm pretty sure, so John Todd tells it that he was an occultist. And yeah, so that's just what I wanted to say, that if you have occult objects in your home, then you have an entry point there. And The Exorcist, Father Lampert, he explains it very, very much better than I can explain it. For example, that space, a spirit is not contained in space. Space is contained inside of a spirit, not the other way around. So to have a universe, a a physical manifestation, you need a consciousness around it for it to exist, not the other way around, which is difficult to understand from a human perspective. So that's what The Exorcist explains in the last video. I put the link down of the short thing of The Exorcist, Father Lampert. And so that's what I have to say about also just fantasy, role play, all these things that get you in another world, that becomes an escape from reality. This can also open you up to demonic possession. So thanks for listening.